What's up, my hidden tokens? So I just got finished watching season two's finale of The Sandman, which was a comic book written by Neil Gaiman. Now, this is currently on Netflix right now. If you haven't watched the show, you should definitely give it a try. It's pretty good. If you have watched the show and want to hear my thoughts about it, stick around. Fair warning, this will include some spoilers. So Tom Sturridge is back as the Dream King, aka the Endless, who manages the realm of the dreaming. It's a mythical world that handles all of the human beings' dreams. So season 2 starts off as you would expect it. Dream King is back, and he is back handling his duties, maintaining his realm of the dreaming. Now in season 1 we was introduced to Dream sisters, Desire, Despair, and Death. In season 2, we were introduced to some more siblings. This time we have a brother. Destiny, played by Adrian Lester, is now summoned Dream and the rest of the family members for a meeting because he sees something in his book that is foretold. We also have a second brother, Destruction, who is played by Barry Sloane, and we also have Delirium, who is played by Esma Creed Miles. Now, do you remember season 1 when Dream went down into hell to fight Lucifer for his stolen mask and he wanted it back? There was a woman down there who was a love interest of Dream that was never really touched upon, but we actually got to see more of that story get fleshed out in season 2. Apparently, the woman that Lucifer was holding hostage was there because of the dream. He fell in love with her. She didn't want nothing to do with him, and he basically sentenced her to a life in hell. Gwendolyn Christie is also back playing Lucifer, which I was happy about, but she doesn't really play much of a role in this season. So the Dream realizes the errors of his ways and goes back into hell because he wants to free this woman from her prison. And when he goes back in there, Lucifer meets him and greets him and says, "Hey, I'm done. I no longer want to be the ruler of hell. You handle it." Now, I wasn't really too sure of what this was going into, and this is the problem I'm having with season 2. There were a lot of plot holes, and there were a lot of things that really wasn't explained and touched on, because after this happened, you really don't really see much of Lucifer. She basically says, "Hey, I'm done ruling hell. You take the key to the gates of hell, give it to whoever, I'm out of here." And that's pretty much her role. It really would have been cool to see another fight between the two of them, but we really didn't get that. So the Dream eventually does free this woman from hell, and he thinks that by doing so, she'll basically embrace him with open arms. Well, that obviously doesn't happen. She wants nothing to do with him, and she leaves and just goes back to living her life on Earth like a normal human being. Now, while all this is going on, Delirium decides that she wants to find her long lost brother, Destruction. So she asks Dream to go on a mission with her to find him and see what happened. Now, while they're looking for Destruction, weird things start happening. People literally just start dying randomly out of nowhere, unexplained deaths. And Dream pretty much has an idea of what's going on. It's almost like someone didn't want them to find him. Eventually, they go to Destiny, and Destiny tells them, "Hey, look, there is one oracle that can help you find your brother, but if you do find him, you might regret it." Obviously, they don't listen to a word he says. They decide, "Hey, screw that. We're going to go find the oracle, and we're going to find our brother and see what's going on." And the oracle is none other than Dream's son, Orpheus. So now we have a backstory that takes us to Orpheus and explains a little bit more about him. This is the part that really grinded my gears a lot. So now we get a flashback of Orpheus and Dream and the siblings. Orpheus is getting married, and he has a very short-lived marriage because as soon as the wedding kicks off, his wife basically gets bitten by a snake and she dies. I mean, they really didn't even get a honeymoon. Now Orpheus is like, "Hey, I'm not taking this line down. I didn't even get any, and I'm gonna find my wife no matter what." So he goes to Death and asks her, "Is there any way you can help me get my wife's soul back?" She tells him, "Hey, you can get your wife out of hell, but the only way that you can come back from that is if I make you immortal, but you might not like that." But he says, "Screw that, make me immortal. I'm gonna go to hell and I'm gonna beg Hades to give me my wife back." Which she does. She grants him his wish and makes him immortal. Death apparently has the ability to do this, and she's been doing it a lot. So he goes to the underworld, meets Hades, sings to him, serenades him, and begs for his wife back. Hades say, "Hey, look, I'll give you your wife back. You can have her. She's going to follow right behind you, and the moment you get out into the sunset, you will see your wife and you guys will be together forever. But do not look back, because if you look back, she'll be stuck in the underworld forever, and there's nothing you can do about it." What does Orpheus do? Looks back. So Orpheus is now immortal and his wife is trapped in the underworld. He's like, "I don't want to live without my wife." He decides that he's going to try to find a way to unalive himself regardless. Eventually, Orpheus finds himself getting decapitated by the Sisters of the Frenzies. These are some demonic, fairy looking demons that basically cut his head off his body and just tosses him like he's nothing. Now, when Morpheus, aka the Dream Lord, finds his son. He finds a severed head on the shores of a beach, and he tells him, like, listen, there's nothing I could do. This is what you wanted. I have to leave you here, but I'm gonna get some monks to come and they'll tend to you. So now Orpheus is living his forever forgotten life as just a severed head. So eventually the Dream King, he does feel sorry for his son. He's like, I'm gonna seek some help. So he goes and finds Lady Constantine. Yes, there was a Lady Constantine back then. Goes and finds her and says, hey, you know what? Can you please look after my son? So she goes, collects his head, and now she's responsible for him. So they have a little flashback about that, which is a pretty detailed story, and it has a pretty significant twist to it. But now fast forward to the present time where the Dream King finds his son and basically asks him to tell him where destruction is. Now, in doing so, the Dream King has to fulfill his son's wishes by taking his life. By telling his father where destruction is, now the Dream King owes him a debt and has to take his life because he's the only one who could do so. And this basically sets up the season finale to how it all ends. Because now the Dream King has spilled family blood, so now he's targeted by the kindly ones. These are the Furies of Greek mythology, and their job is basically to punish those who commit crimes. And spilling family blood is technically a crime. So now we get to the second part of season 2. Now the kindly ones are basically stalking Dream, and he is not safe outside of his realm. Now this is where Morpheus has decided that, hey, if something happens to him, I have to make sure that my realm is safe. So he basically goes looking for his son. Yes, he did have another human son that was conceived in the dream world. So this is where the Dream King is like, hey, you know what? If something happens to me, I have to make sure the dreaming is safe. Thus enters Daniel Hall. Daniel Hall was conceived in the dream world by the Dream King and Lyda Hall, who is his mother. So Dream is like, if something happens to me, Daniel will be my successor. So now he has to protect Daniel and make sure nothing happens to him, or else, that's it for the dreaming. The only problem with this now is Loki is currently after Daniel Hall as a baby. So Loki kidnaps Daniel Hall in the real world along with Puck, who is played by Jack Gleason. They obviously have some nefarious plans for the child. The Dream finally decides he's going to seek out some help. He goes to today's Lady Constantine and asks her for help. Now, Jenna Coleman is back playing Lady Constantine, and I gotta admit, anytime she's on screen, she always does a good job. She's pretty smart, and she's a little bit arrogant, but she always does a good job as Constantine. She knows exactly what she's doing, and she's pretty good at being a spiritual detective. So the Dream conjures up a new Nightmare who's nothing like the old Nightmare, because the old Nightmare tried to kill him. So the new Nightmare is basically here to aid Constantine in finding Daniel to make sure nothing happens to him. They eventually find Loki and get Daniel back from him, but Loki burned away his human form, so now you're left with this godly baby form of Daniel Hall, who is ready for his ascension into the dream world. So in the event of the Dream's death, Daniel Hall will now become the King of Dreams. Season 2 is a little bit slow paced, and basically all it is the kindly ones are now stalking Dream and saying, hey, there's nothing you can do. Your death is inevitable. He eventually accepts this and basically takes the hand of death, which is his sister, and she's the one who sends him away. Now in the final episode, Daniel Hall evolves into a grown man, and here you see Jacob Anderson in the flesh. He's ready for his ascension, he is ready to become the King of Dreams, but he doesn't really know what to do. So what does any kid that was born yesterday with the power of a god do? Starts reviving everyone who died yesterday. It felt like the writers were kind of rushing the season, and Neil Gaiman did say that, hey, if they wanted to do another season of The Sandman, he'll be all for it. But this was the season finale, so they had to finish it off some way, somehow. So the end, you basically see all the family and everyone who knew Dream, the original Dream, at the funeral, and they send him off into the great beyond. And now Daniel Hall is new Dream, and he just starts bringing people back, but they're like, listen, we don't want you to bring us back. You're the new Dream. You find your new way, you do your thing, and we're here. We're dead already. We're gone. Do what you gotta do. And it is kind of messed up. Nobody's really looking at him as the Dream King. Nobody really messes with him like that. They're like, man, you just became the Dream yesterday. We're not the guy we knew. So you see a bunch of familiar faces coming back, and they're all mourning the Dream. They're all, sad that he's gone. And this is pretty much where the season ends. Now, don't get me wrong, where season 1, you basically had a lot of introduction to what the Dream was. You basically had the sisters, you had the Dream, you had the powers that be that was trying to explain to you what this world was, and they explained it in great detail. In season 2, it felt like they were trying to tie up some loose ends, but they also wanted to finish off the season in the best way they knew how. I'm not going to say that season 2 wasn't good. It was fair. I'll give it that. But there were a lot of things that made me question, like, why is this happening? Even Lucifer showing up was kind of like, what's the point if you're not going to do anything? The world of the Sandman still looks great. You had a lot of visuals that popped, and you had like dragons and stuff like that that looks great, but like I said, the storytelling kind of fell flat. But I am happy about the way it ended. I mean, they ended it with a new Dream King. He meets the siblings. They all accept him as their brother, and everybody is moving on with their lives, and they're gonna be back to their realm and taking care of their responsibilities. I still think The Sandman is a great show, and if you haven't checked it out yet, you should definitely do so because it is a great watch. I think out of like a high score of a 10, I'll give season 2 a 6. Like I said, there really wasn't much going on in season 2 as action wise. There little action, a lot of storytelling, but it left a lot of plot holes and a lot of loose ends and things that just weren't explained too great. But hey, if you like this review, please comment, like, and subscribe to this page. And if you have any thoughts on The Sandman, if you watched it, let me know what you thought about it. To all my hidden tokens, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.